My name is Maryam Alaniz. I'm 24 years old, queer, and the daughter of Iranian immigrants, and I'm excited to be speaking at this international rally with socialists from other countries fighting against racist police violence and the capitalist system. Right now in the US, we are in the midst of what is being described as the largest movement in the history of this country. Millions of people have taken to the streets over the past few weeks. These uprisings are being led by Black working-class youth who are fed up with racism and police violence. And this movement is full of young people, from the youth who organized the climate march to the youth who protested against ICE detention centers. We are young folks who know that the LGBTQ movement, which was launched by Stonewall, was a riot, and we want to fight for a society where Black lives matter. And it's not just young folks in the US. Last year, we watched Chilean youth fight the police in the streets, as well as young people in Iran and Lebanon. In these countries, people are fighting not only their government and their own police, but the weight of US imperialism. In countries like Cuba, Venezuela, and Iran, where my family lives, people are struggling every day under oppressive and inhumane US sanctions. Amidst Israel's plan to annex the West Bank and Palestine, Israeli police recently murdered 27-year-old Ahmad Erekat at a West Bank checkpoint. When we fight against the police here, we fight against the carnage of imperialism everywhere. Young people are on the front lines of this struggle because of our own life experiences. In my short life, I've already lived through 2 economic crises. Right as the pandemic hit, I was laid off like millions of workers across the country. Over 20% of people ages 16 to 24 in the US are currently unemployed. Among Black youth, the unemployment rate is close to 30%. Among the Latino community, especially Mexicans and Central Americans, the unemployment rate is currently 37%. The shackles of student debt that we will never pay off undermine our hopes for a future. More and more of us understand that a climate crisis looms large, threatening our futures. It's no wonder that we are turning to socialism and taking to the streets. In the US, the image of George Floyd begging for his life under the weight of police brutality lit a spark for millions of people. For almost 2 months now, we've been confronting the state night after night. As the ruling class throws us pitiful crumbs, it is clear that we can't reform the system that's killing Black people, cutting services for oppressed communities, and jobs for the working class. The whole system of policing needs to go. We need to abolish policing altogether, but this requires more than budget cuts. It requires an end to a capitalist system that needs police to protect the enormous wealth of people like Jeff Bezos. These past 2 weeks, an occupation outside City Hall in New York City brought together many of the young people who resisted the curfew and faced off against tear gas and rubber bullets in a city run by Democrats. In Seattle, young people not only took over a park, but took over a police precinct, organizing the Capitol Hill or Occupied Protest, or CHOP for short, which was an area democratically run by protesters without cops. But social movements alone will never be enough. Past uprisings such as the first spate of Black Lives Matter protests, Occupy Wall Street, and the anti-globalism protests of the 90s inspired us, but also taught us that we need to go further to meaningfully change this horrible system of global capitalism. If we want to avoid the co-optation, fatigue, or demoralization that so many other movements have experienced, we have to imagine the necessary steps for the movement to radicalize, spread, and embrace a revolutionary perspective beyond our autonomous zones. To this end, we must understand that in order to win the fight against capitalism and imperialism, we must join our movement with the working class. They alone have the power to grind the gears of capitalist production to a halt. But we can't fight capitalism from within a capitalist party. The Democratic Party, once again, is trying to play the role of a graveyard for our struggles. The young people mobilized in the streets today, the young people who consider themselves socialists, have to challenge the cynical politics of lesser evilism that calls for a vote for so-called progressive Democrats. The future is ours, and we want more. We want our own socialist candidates, truly representative of the workers and the multiracial youth that are taking to the streets. We want public and universal health care. We want public and free universities. We want housing for all. We want to abolish ICE. We want to abolish the police. And we want to open the borders. We want the total emancipation of Black and brown people and of women. We want the rights for undocumented folks. We want liberation for queer folks, and we want to save the planet from climate catastrophe. It is necessary to confront the wealth of the super wealthy who are among the richest on the planet thanks to financial capital and the exploitation of the working class worldwide. That is why we need an independent, revolutionary working class party that fights for socialism. A party that is able to coordinate these efforts nationally and internationally against the cops, the military, against borders, sanctions, and even bombs. The Democratic Party, under the progressive wing of Bernie Sanders, will never be that party. So, all the young people who are turning to socialism, who are angry at the political establishment, and believe that we should defund and abolish the police, all those that are organized in groups like the DSA must break with the Democratic Party now, and we must work together with all of our resources to build an independent socialist party. It is undeniable that we are living in a historic moment. Our generation doesn't trust cops, capitalist parties, or the status quo anymore. More and more, people are rejecting the idea that revolution is impossible. And right now, the Black working class youth are leading the way. Radical young Americans and students like myself have been at the forefront of putting up inspiring fights in the past. From the lunch counter sit-ins during the civil rights movement to the student uprisings against the Vietnam War. But an uprising is not enough. We have to fight to crush the capitalist system once and for all. Under this new political awakening, we have the historic task ahead of us to unite this movement with the revolutionary working class. We are proudly the legacy of Marx, Lenin, Trotsky, and Luxemburg. We want to inject new energy into the labor movement. A socialist future is on the horizon, and we are here to fight for it.